Hi everyone, and welcome back to Six Path Weeb, where we don't just revisit the shinobi world. We reimagine it. Today, we're diving into a powerful alternate timeline, a world where Naruko, the female counterpart of Naruto, doesn't just inherit Kurama's chakra. She masters it. Both yin and yang. Balanced. Controlled. United. But what would that mean? Would she become a Jinchuriki unlike any other, one born not out of chaos, but out of harmony? Would her story unfold as a tale of early awakening, of unshakable control over unimaginable power? We're going to unpack it all, from her early development and battles, to how this perfect balance could alter the course of key events like the Pain Invasion, the Five-Cage Summit, and the final war that shaped the shinobi world. But before we jump in, a quick reminder. The content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now let's begin, and step into a world where the nine tails never had to be tamed. Because Naruko was born to wield balance itself. Kanahagakur, the moment of the seal. The only thing visible around the area where the previously rampaging nine-tailed beast had been was widespread devastation. The old legends describing the nine-tailed fox as a bringer of chaos and calamity seemed, in that moment, more factual than fantastical. That was the thought that came unbidden to the fourth Hokage as he gazed out over his beloved village. There was no time for reflection, however. He had a duty, to remove the creature from the battlefield and seal it in a place where it could no longer pose a threat. That single goal consumed his thoughts and propelled his actions. There was no handbook detailing how to deal with a tailed beast. Even the first Hokage had left behind no written guide on the matter. But the fourth had an idea. Summoning the Chief Toad, his long-trusted ally, he requested help to restrain the creature for a few precious moments, just long enough to teleport it away to a secure location where the seal could be completed without risk to others. The Toad fulfilled his role admirably. The fourth Hokage successfully transported the nine-tailed fox to the edge of a field, near his wife and their newborn daughter, Naruko. Though exhausted from childbirth, Kushina's unique chakra chains were the only force he could rely on in such short time to hold the fox in place. When he reappeared beside them in a flash of golden light, a deep heaviness rested on his heart. Strangely, Kushina was already there, as though she knew what he planned. She stood ready, not out of fear, but with calm acceptance. She was determined to do her part, whatever the cost. In a split second, he appeared with Naruko cradled in his arms. In a different world, one where he wasn't already burdened by guilt, he might not have pondered which half of the Kyuubi's chakra, yin or yang, to seal within his daughter. He may have chosen the physical side, believing strength would best prepare her for the future. But here, looking into the determined eyes of his wife and the joyful smile of baby Naruko, who was already trying to wriggle from his grasp, a new thought surfaced. Maybe she already has enough of the physical side. He thought, sweat trailing down his temple. In that moment, he made a new decision, unaware of how deeply it would alter the path not only of his daughter, but of the entire world. After all, how different could it be, yin or yang? 1 year later, Kanahagakur. Boredom. That was what the great nine-tailed fox felt. Within the spiritual space that now served as its home, a suffocating stillness lingered. The Kyuubi had remained in a state of near constant dormancy for 6 months. Ever since the golden-haired human had divided its chakra and sealed the yin half into a child, Naruko. It had been an unbearable transition. For a being made entirely of chakra, the experience of being divided, even metaphorically, was overwhelming. Kurama had never known discomfort until then. While battles in the past, including one against the first Hokage, were frustrating or humbling, this was different. This was something deeper. The separation of its very essence, its chakra, had caused immense, incomprehensible disorientation. For 6 months, Kurama existed in a state of internal chaos. There was no rest, no relief, just the persistent feeling of something being incomplete. Still, with time, that chaotic energy gradually lessened. The pain did not spike or fade, it simply was, constant and unchanging. And yet, Kurama endured. By the end of the 6th month, the discomfort vanished as suddenly as it had arrived. In its place was a strange calm. And with that calm came clarity. With no physical form, no body or needs tied to the material world, the spiritual nature of the Kyuubi's existence allowed for deeper reflection. Kurama began to understand itself more fully. It realized, in those months of silent thought, that without the distractions of physical instincts, its mind became more focused, more thoughtful. Rage, once immediate and overwhelming, became something to analyze, something to control. Past grievances, against those like Madara, Mito, Hashirama, and others, no longer ignited the same impulsive reaction. With perspective came acceptance. The past could not be changed. It could only be acknowledged. Resentment was exhausting. Kurama knew it had become a symbol of fear across the shinobi world, partly because it never hesitated to express its anger. But now, trapped in a seal within a child who had done nothing wrong, Kurama felt a new sense of purpose forming. It didn't mean the beast had forgotten its history. There was still one it considered a true threat, the masked individual who once took control of it with eyes not unlike those gifted by the Sage of Six Paths to his eldest son. Whether that person was truly Madara or simply an imitator, Kurama didn't care. The power to override its will had been real. And dangerous. Kurama wasn't afraid, of course. It was still the mighty nine-tailed fox. But perhaps it was time for a different strategy. The fox knew it was sealed within Naruko, and it would remain so until she chose otherwise. So why not take this time to grow stronger together? After all, if she succeeded in facing the dangers of the world, then so too would Kurama benefit. And who knows? If a connection formed between them, true cooperation, perhaps something greater than either of them alone could emerge. Yes. That was a more promising future. A new chapter had begun. But if she ever acted out of anger, Naruko could easily be outwitted by a clever opponent. A calm voice, perhaps the voice of her conscience, seemed to echo in her thoughts, gently reminding her of this truth. Wait. Do I even have a conscience? She mused. Still, the message remained clear. Madara wasn't just powerful, he was intelligent. Strength alone couldn't guarantee victory, especially not when used recklessly. A wild charge wouldn't be enough to overcome someone with such strategic insight, no matter how much power was given to Naruko. And that was when the plan began to shape itself clearly in the fox's mind. A. Assist her as much as possible, a thought that made him cringe slightly. B. Bring her into her mental realm at the earliest opportunity. C. Explain the reasoning behind point A, using gentle and supportive words. D. Build a friendly relationship. He winced at the idea. E. Guide her step by step toward overcoming Madara. F. Encourage her to grow strong enough to unlock her potential. G. Use that connection to gain freedom. It was, in a word, brilliant. He wouldn't need to act impulsively, instead, he would be clever, strategic, and thoughtful, just like the fox he was. He already had the free-spirited nature down, but the intelligent part? That had been a work in progress, until now. He would have rubbed his paws in anticipation, if not for the sharp claws that weren't exactly suited to such a gesture. A new life begins. Meanwhile, little Naruko spent her first month adjusting to the unfamiliar sensation of intense headaches. They were so overwhelming that she spent much of the next several months crying, something the medics attributed to her unique connection to powerful chakra from the moment of birth. Many believed it was just her body adapting to its new reality as a Jinchuriki, a person who carries within them a mighty spirit. But in truth, the great fox within her mind was experiencing turbulent shifts, sometimes calm, sometimes restless, as unpredictable as a windstorm. Despite it all, Naruko's chakra, a blend of spiritual and physical energy, began to take a remarkably balanced shape, more so than was typical for her Uzumaki lineage. Normally, Uzumaki were known for their abundant physical energy and exceptional vitality. Yet in Naruko's case, the spiritual side of her chakra had also been strengthened by the fox spirit inside her, drawing from her growing chakra system in harmony. It was a marvel. The fourth Hokage's decision to seal the spiritual half of the nine tails within Naruko, in this world, had proven to be unexpectedly wise. It allowed her chakra to develop in balance, laying a strong foundation for control in the future. Once the fox settled down, Naruko found a bit of peace. By the time she was around 6 months old, she had already tired of crying and instead expressed her needs in a rather unique way. She didn't cry much anymore. Instead, she would simply fix others with a surprisingly intense gaze. And somehow, the medics always understood what she wanted. Her commanding little glare made it clear what she needed, and when she was given what she desired, she'd beam with the brightest smile. It was the kind of smile that warmed hearts and made the hospital staff grow especially fond of her. By the time she was well enough to be discharged, the medics had all grown attached to her. Her hospital room had gradually filled with toys, her favorite orange blanket, and cheerful decorations. Many suspected the Hokage himself had a hand in keeping her there a bit longer than necessary. After all, she had stayed with him in the Hokage's own residence until the age of 3. The medics would joke that the Hokage wanted her all to himself, and despite their grumbling, they had to admit it was probably for the best. A hospital was no place to grow up. In another life, perhaps the fox might have reacted differently, trying to escape the seal, drawing concern with its chaotic energy. But here, in this world, the fox had no such intentions. The energy Naruko carried was calm, and the medics found her charming rather than intimidating. Any unease some might have felt was brushed aside by the kind and maternal instincts she stirred in the hearts of those around her. 3 years passed. Naruko had gone through everything a young child should, learning to walk, talk, run, and play. Konoha remained cautious, but a few more villagers had begun to open their hearts. Still, the time eventually came for the third Hokage to make a difficult decision. He had to place Naruko in an orphanage. Though he had grown incredibly fond of her, viewing her as a granddaughter in many ways, he couldn't be seen as playing favorites. Other children had also lost their parents, and they too deserved fairness and care. As Hokage, he was committed to treating every child of the village with equality. Even if Naruko was someone special, the daughter of a cherished friend, he could not let his emotions override his duty. So he called her into his office. The small girl entered in her usual way, somehow managing to open the door despite not reaching the handle. She beamed up at him, her eyes bright. "Gigi," she said joyfully, rushing toward him for a hug. He smiled warmly but sighed inwardly. This was going to be harder than he thought. "Come, Naruko-chan," he said gently. "Let's take a walk. Maybe we'll visit that ramen stand you like so much." "Yada. Let's go," she cheered, taking his hand and tugging him toward the door. They walked quietly through the peaceful village paths. The Hokage looked down at her determined steps and smiled, though his heart weighed heavy. "I want you to understand something," he said softly. "This isn't your fault, not at all. If anyone's to blame, it's me." Naruko looked up at him in confusion. "Huh? You know I'm Hokage, right?" he asked. "Yep. You're the strongest," she said with pride. He chuckled but felt a sting in his chest. And sometimes being Hokage means making very hard decisions. "Like what?" she asked curiously. He took a breath. "Naruko-chan. I've decided that it's time for you to live at the orphanage." "Okay," she replied cheerfully. The Hokage blinked. "You don't? You're not upset? What's an orphanage?" This time, the Hokage sighed and chuckled, gently rubbing his forehead. Of course, she was only 3. She wouldn't know. It's a place where children who don't have parents go to live. There are other children there too, and you'll make friends, and learn to do things on your own. It'll be a new adventure. Her bright expression faltered, just a little. "So, are you going to leave me?" "No. Never." He crouched down to her level, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'll still visit, and if anything ever worries you, I'll be there. You'll always be in my heart, no matter where you live." Naruko sniffled but tried to be strong, just like he'd always told her good ninjas should be. He smiled. "Hey. How about we get to that ramen stand in full ninja style? You can eat all the ramen you want." Naruko's face lit up with joy, her worries momentarily forgotten. "Ah, the boundless resilience of a child," thought the Hokage with a soft smile. And so Naruko was taken to the orphanage, not without shedding a final tear as she was gently parted from her grandfatherly guardian. Even then, a voice remained with her, a comforting presence within her mind that always offered warmth when she felt alone. Because of that voice, she never truly felt isolated. It helped her see the brighter side of the Hokage's parting words, particularly the promise of free ramen and the chance to one day explore the world as a ninja. Whenever her eyes welled up, the voice comforted her, reminding her that goodbyes weren't forever, and that soon they would see her again. She often wondered about the voice's reference to her as my vessel, and though she didn't understand all it meant, she trusted that voice completely. It became her dearest friend. As time passed, life in the orphanage moved quietly. The older children often seemed annoyed with her, and even kids her own age kept their distance. Naruko didn't know why, and the voice gently advised her to not dwell on the negativity of others. "They're not worth your worry," the voice would say with a playful tone, "and besides, you've got better things to do, like unlocking your full potential." Not quite sure what that meant, Naruko followed the advice anyway. She began watching the world around her more closely, learning by simply observing. The voice, which had become like a mentor, encouraged her curiosity, guiding her thoughts toward deeper understanding. In truth, the voice was more than just a friendly companion. It was Kurama, the majestic fox spirit sealed within her. Although he couldn't grant her super strength or energy like in Tales of Other Worlds, Kurama did what he could. He enhanced her mind. With a subtle touch, he helped her brain process information faster than most adults. It wasn't overwhelming, it was gradual and careful, allowing Naruko to grow into it naturally. By encouraging her to observe and think deeply, he was training her mind to become sharp and perceptive. Another gift Kurama quietly granted her was a resistance to illusions, especially ones that affected the mind. With his guidance, Naruko would one day be able to see through such tricks by simply focusing her thoughts. This talent, like all others, began with simple awareness of her surroundings and mindfulness. But with greater awareness came the realization that hearing a voice in her head wasn't something most children experienced. Naruko began noticing that no one else responded to unseen jokes or smiled at unheard conversations. For a short time, this understanding made her pull away from Kurama, hoping instead to connect with her peers. She tried to befriend other children again, those who already saw her as unusual. Seeing this, Kurama decided it was time to introduce himself properly. One night, as Naruko slept, he brought her into the space of her own mind, a place she had never consciously visited before. Her mindscape wasn't a dark or gloomy space like in some stories. Instead, it looked like a crystal-clear underground chamber, filled with sparkling sapphire tubes glowing softly, carrying her chakra through the beautifully carved stone walls. Ruby red lines crisscrossed with precision, and the water below her feet shimmered like a pristine tropical pool. It was stunning, just like a dream. As Naruko walked through it, her blue eyes wide with curiosity, she eventually arrived at a grand chamber where all the ruby pipes converged. In its center was a sight both strange and beautiful. A massive, gentle, transparent hand, bluish in hue, stood where a cage might have been in another world. Its fingers arched high to make room for the passing chakra tubes, creating an intricate and peaceful pattern. Naruko stared in awe. Then she heard the voice again, but this time it wasn't just in her mind. It echoed softly, like a calm breeze through trees. "I wouldn't touch that if I were you," it chuckled warmly. Naruko gasped, both excited and unsure. "Is this a dream? Are you really real?" "I assure you, little Naruko, I'm very real." Emerging from the shadows of the chamber was a giant fox, majestic, powerful, and yet somehow kind. His deep fur shimmered with a shadowy glow, but his tone was calm and friendly. "Whoa! You're huge," she said, eyes shining with wonder. The fox seemed familiar, like a figure from an old storybook. Then she remembered. "You look like that great fox from the tale about the fourth Hokage. The one with the big frog in the big battle." Kurama let out a soft laugh. It had taken him years to learn to control his voice so that it would no longer rumble and shake everything. Now, it was calm and soothing. "Yes, I am that fox," he said, his voice steady. "Your Hokage sealed me inside you when you were just a baby, believing I could give you great strength. I know it may sound strange, but ever since then, I've been here, watching over you, guiding you, and helping you whenever I could." Naruko's eyes widened. "You've been helping me all this time?" "Yes," Kurama replied sincerely. "I've grown to see you not just as a host, but as a companion, a friend." Overcome with excitement, Naruko rushed forward to touch the glowing hand between them. But as soon as she did, a sudden spark of energy knocked her backward gently. After a moment of lightheadedness, she stirred, eyes blinking open. "Oops," she said, rubbing her head. Kurama chuckled. "You really had to touch the big shiny thing, didn't you?" Naruko gave an embarrassed smile. "Sorry." "No harm done," Kurama said, amused. "Now, do you have any questions for me?" "Well, yeah, but I don't know if I should ask." "It's okay. Ask anything." Naruko hesitated, then whispered, "Are you a girl fox?" Kurama paused, then calmly replied, "I am male." Naruko grinned. "Okay. Next question, if you're super powerful, why did you get sealed at all? And why do people say there was an attack before I was born?" Kurama's tone shifted. "That is a difficult question. The truth is, I was not acting on my own. A man with terrible intentions, someone who called himself Madara Uchiha, took control of me. He forced me to act against my will, and the village was harmed as a result. But your Hokage stopped him. He saved everyone and, in his final act, sealed me inside you. I was angry back then, but with time, I've accepted it. I now choose to help you." Naruko looked at him in awe. "That's amazing. You're amazing. Will you tell me stories about your adventures?" "Of course," Kurama said with a soft smile. "Whenever you're ready. One last thing, what's your name? I can't just call you Big Fox forever." Kurama felt a rare warmth at that question. After a pause, he said gently, my name is Kurama." From that moment forward, a unique and powerful friendship began to grow, between a young girl with a bright future and the noble spirit that resided within her. As the years passed, Naruko's life began to change. With Kurama as her silent guide, she found peace in her thoughts and a new sense of confidence. When she turned 6, she joined the Ninja Academy of Konoha. Unfortunately, it was a bit disappointing at first. She had already learned to read and write, thanks to the worn books in the orphanage, which she had eagerly studied. The academy lessons were slow, and Kurama advised her to act like a determined but average student, to avoid unwanted attention. Though the lessons were repetitive for her, Kurama insisted she pay close attention, just to catch anything new. And though she never really did, it helped reinforce her knowledge. Eventually, Naruko began making friends, true friends. Heirs to various clans warmed up to her kindness and sincerity, and together they laughed, played, and learned. To the delight of the Hokage, Naruko had begun to dream of becoming one herself one day. Kurama, always the planner, reminded her, if she stayed kind and worked hard, those friends would one day support her. It wasn't about using them, it was about building bonds that mattered. And besides, they were fun to be around. And so she was taken to the orphanage, not without shedding a few quiet tears as she watched her grandfather figure walk away. Yet, Naruko was never truly alone. A gentle voice within her mind offered comfort during her most sorrowful moments. That voice often helped her look at the brighter side of things, like enjoying complimentary ramen and dreaming of future ninja travels. Whenever sadness overwhelmed her, the voice reminded her kindly that everything would be alright, and that one day, they would see her again. The voice had once referred to her as my container, and while she didn't fully understand what that meant, she figured it had something to do with being special. After all, she was still just a child. Time passed quietly, though not always kindly. The older children at the orphanage often seemed upset with her, and even those her age avoided her without explanation. Naruko was curious why they treated her so coldly, but the voice, her steadfast and mysterious companion, simply told her not to waste time on people who didn't matter. Instead, the voice suggested she try to grow wiser, offering a unique and surprisingly helpful idea: observe the world around her. The fox-like presence behind the voice didn't seem particularly skilled in entertaining children, but it was trying in earnest. In another world, perhaps the fox would have made her incredibly strong right away. But here, its influence was subtler. While it couldn't give her superhuman healing or strength, it could gently enhance her learning capacity. Quietly and gradually, it increased the speed at which her brain processed information, about twice the rate of a fully matured adult. This was all part of helping her grow without overwhelming her young mind. To help Naruko train this ability, the voice encouraged her to pay close attention to everything she saw and heard. Little by little, her mind sharpened, and she became astonishingly observant for a child her age. One other gift the fox was able to offer was a natural resistance to illusions, more precisely, protection from mental manipulation techniques. This was a trait shared by many Jinchuriki, and it served her well. Her ability to notice small details soon led to an unusual realization: most people didn't hear voices in their heads. They didn't randomly giggle at internal jokes or respond to invisible companions. The thought unsettled her briefly, and she began to pull away from her inner friend, trying instead to connect with the other children. But just as she began to make progress, the fox decided it was time. One night while she slept, the great fox brought Naruko into her mindscape. In another world, such a space might have resembled a dreary sewer. But here, it was something else entirely, clean and crystalline, with sapphire blue chakra channels running across polished stone walls. Even the water shimmered like something from a peaceful island, suggesting an orderly and vivid mind, if a touch dramatic, thanks to her internal companion. Young Naruko wandered with wide-eyed curiosity, exploring this strange and beautiful place. Though she was only 5, she had already taught herself to read and write, albeit a bit clumsily. No one had formally instructed her. She had learned by quietly watching the older children at the orphanage practice, and even borrowed a few books when no one was looking. She'd absorbed every page like a sponge. Eventually, she entered a large chamber unlike anything she'd seen before. Ruby-colored chakra pipes covered the walls, and instead of a dark cage, a great translucent bluish hand formed a protective dome at the chamber's center. It was as if this hand were gently holding something powerful yet calm. Naruko approached it with wonder. The sapphire-tinted water beneath her feet barely reached her ankles, allowing her to walk without difficulty. Just as she reached out to touch the hand, a deep, familiar voice echoed gently from within. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," it said with a warm chuckle. "Is this a dream? Are you real?" Naruko asked in awe. She had grown used to hearing the voice, but seeing the source was a surprise. "I'm very real, little Naruko," the voice replied. And then the fox revealed itself, majestic, dark-furred, and radiating an ancient strength. "Whoa! You're huge," she gasped, her eyes lighting up with fascination. "Yes," the fox replied calmly, "I am the same creature you read about in the story of the fourth Hokage. The one who once stood against a mighty toad in an epic battle." The fox's voice, now refined and comforting, had taken a long time to master. Communicating gently with a child was not something it had done before. But now, it found it strangely fulfilling. "Your Hokage sealed me within you when you were a baby," Kurama explained gently. "I believe he hoped I would help you one day. Since then, I've done what I could, guided your thoughts, encouraged your growth, and kept you company. And now, I've brought you here so we can speak properly. I've come to think of you as a friend." Naruko's heart swelled with joy at the word friend. She ran forward without thinking, straight into the giant hand. Zap! For a few moments, her tiny body buzzed with static, and then she flopped back with a sleepy groan. "What happened?" "You happened," Kurama said in a playfully exasperated tone, echoing the teasing banter she had sometimes heard among the other kids. "Sorry," she mumbled, rubbing the back of her head. The fox laughed lightly. "Well, now we've officially met." "Yup," she said brightly. Silence followed for a moment, then Kurama nudged, "Don't you have any questions?" Naruko hesitated. "Well. 1. Are you a girl? Because I read that fox spirits can be either and sometimes they." "I'm a male," Kurama interjected quickly, then softened his tone. "Don't worry." "Okay," she said cheerfully. "Next question, if you're really strong, why were you sealed? I read in a book that there was a giant fox that attacked the village a long time ago. They say the fourth Hokage had to stop it. But why?" Kurama's expression turned serious. "There was someone who manipulated me," he said, voice steady but tinged with emotion. "A man named Madara Uchiha. He took control of me against my will. Your Hokage saved me from that control, and then, to protect others and perhaps redeem me, he sealed me within you. I wasn't exactly thrilled at the time, but I've come to understand it as part of my journey." Naruko looked at him with admiration. "You're amazing. You have to tell me about those adventures someday, they sound incredible." Kurama blinked, surprised by her enthusiasm. "Yes. I suppose I could." "One last question," she said, face lighting up with curiosity. "What's your name? I can't just call you Big Fox forever." That question stirred something unexpected in the ancient being. After a long pause, he finally answered. "My name is Kurama." And so, a remarkable friendship began, in a place deep within, between a spirited girl named Naruko and the timeless guardian sealed inside her. The years passed gently. Kurama, surprisingly content, found peace in his calm new role, watching over Naruko, guiding her as a quiet mentor. Naruko, for her part, cherished their bond. At 6 years old, Naruko entered the Ninja Academy of Konoha. Despite her excitement, the lessons were slow and uninspiring. Most topics were ones she had already studied in the orphanage's modest library. She itched to raise her hand and say she already knew, but Kurama advised patience. "Act like a hard-working average student," he told her wisely. "The truth would only raise questions. You don't want to explain that a mysterious voice helps you study." So Naruko smiled, took notes, and learned again what she already knew. It helped reinforce her memory, and soon, she found herself making friends. Real ones. Shikamaru, the clever daydreamer. Huji, the gentle soul. Kiba, the energetic wild child. Hinata, the quiet kind heart. Ino, the spirited chatterbox. Shino, the thoughtful observer. And even Sasuke, who carried a calm seriousness and a quiet pride. Naruko became the glue that held them together. She made everyone feel welcome, understood, and seen. Kurama encouraged her to build these bonds, not for politics, but because friendship was a strength of its own. Still, Naruko never forgot her promise, to grow stronger, not just for herself, but for Kurama too. After all, someone had once used him unfairly. She would train to protect her friend and make sure that such injustice would never touch either of them again. And so, in a peaceful village, with laughter in the air and promise in her heart, the story of Naruko and Kurama began its true chapter, one of growth, of courage, and of hope. Despite Kurama's concerns, Naruko remained deeply intrigued by the study of genjutsu. Even though the mighty fox spirit often urged her to abandon this path, she couldn't bring herself to stop. Genjutsu was the only subject where she and Kurama disagreed strongly. The fox feared she might one day control others as dangerously as Madara once had. But Naruko wasn't driven by the idea of power over others, rather, she felt an innate connection to the art, likely influenced by the immense chakra within her. Her passion to understand all aspects of shinobi arts kept her going. Kurama was reluctant, but even he had to admit Naruko's determination was unwavering. After school each day, Naruko immersed herself in books, especially those about area-wide genjutsu. It wasn't just interest that pushed her, but necessity. She wanted to train in privacy, without drawing attention. That first year, she pored over old texts and complex theories, coming to a startling realization: the shinobi world didn't truly understand genjutsu. Most techniques seemed to have been created through improvisation, people experimenting with hand signs until something worked. Without powerful visual abilities like certain clans possessed, most simply guessed their way through. This surprised Naruko until she found an ancient book titled Myths and Legends of the Shinobi World. It described a legendary ninja who had mastered chakra so completely that they could shape techniques on instinct, bending illusion and reality without relying on rigid structures. It might have been exaggerated, but it sparked a revelation: chakra was more flexible than people believed. Hand seals and incantations helped, but they weren't the limit. Thus began her focus at the academy: advanced chakra theory far beyond the standard curriculum. But this came at a cost. With her schedule full of training, physical conditioning in a hidden field, and personal study, she started falling behind in academic subjects like history and math. Although she tried to pay attention in class, her mind was often elsewhere, and distractions from classmates didn't help either. Kurama would often lecture her about losing focus, especially when it came to bonding with others. But Naruko couldn't bring herself to distance from her friends; they were important to her. Then came a turning point in the form of a tragic event: the Uchiha incident. Sasuke, her classmate, became quiet and withdrawn. Despite everyone's efforts to reach out to him, he distanced himself. Naruko, immersed in her studies, found it difficult to reconnect, though a part of her wished she had tried harder. Her days fell into routine. She would wake up early, study chakra theory, attend the academy, have lunch while reading, and train in her genjutsu shielded field until evening. By night, she'd refine her chakra control, striving to sense its flow inside and around her. This led her toward sensor training, and she discovered she had a natural talent. After feeling her chakra coils clearly, she could have stopped, but she kept going. Kurama supported this, telling her that the ability to sense chakra around her would prove useful. Her range steadily improved, from sensing within 15 meters passively to nearly 100 when fully focused. Years passed this way, and although she occasionally shared lunch with classmates, the bond she'd once had with the clan heir slowly faded. Not out of choice, but because of time and distance. Kurama advised secrecy in her training. "It's always better to be underestimated than overestimated," he often said. By the time graduation approached, Naruko had mastered chakra flow exercises so advanced that even some chunin struggled with them. Her sensory perception was highly refined, and her control was exceptional. Despite struggling with written exams, she did well in the physical portion. She approached the ninjutsu segment with a sense of quiet excitement. She hadn't practiced academy techniques much, but she understood the theory. The transformation technique was simple for her. She formed the signs with precision, enveloped herself in chakra, and transformed perfectly into a likeness of the third Hokage. Iruka and Mizuki were stunned. It was by far the best execution they'd seen from her. Next came the substitution technique. It was more difficult but still manageable. Using hand signs, she successfully swapped places with a nearby chair, although a little unsteadily. Iruka frowned briefly, but Mizuki remained observant. Finally, it was time for the clone technique. It was theoretically simpler than substitution but harder than transformation. Naruko attempted it without hand signs, a bit of a gamble. She gathered chakra to her sides and focused, but something disrupted her concentration. The clones formed, but they were pale and unsteady, collapsing seconds later. Iruka's disappointment was clear. "You didn't pass," he announced. Crushed, Naruko left the academy quietly, the symbol of graduation, a headband, absent from her forehead. She walked to the swings outside, watching families celebrate with their children. Shikamaru's mother twirled around in joy while he mumbled his usual troublesome with a slight grin. Naruko tried to smile, but the sting of envy and sadness pushed her to retreat. Her sanctuary was the top of the Hokage monument, particularly the head of the fourth Hokage. From there, she could see the entire village, the busy shops, shinobi leaping across rooftops, the heartbeat of her home. It calmed her spirit. She remembered a special moment from when she was 6 years old. Flashback. So, Naruko, you still want to leave the orphanage? The third Hokage asked with a kind smile. Yes, thank you, Gigi. Now I'll have more time to become a great ninja. She replied cheerfully, quickly adding, and I can take care of myself, believe it. The Hokage chuckled. Of course you can. You're growing up fast, Naruko. But tell me, why do you want to become a great ninja? Because ninja are amazing. They're so strong and brave. I want to be the strongest and most respected one ever. The old man mused. So, you want to be Hokage? Huh? The Hokage is the strongest ninja in the village, he said. No way. You're that strong, Gigi? But you're old. He laughed. Don't be fooled by appearances. Age doesn't mean weakness. He then added, but Naruko, to become Hokage, your strength must serve a greater purpose. He transported them with a quick movement to the top of the fourth Hokage's head and pointed out over the village. Tell me, what do you see? Konoha, of course. It's so pretty, she whispered, amazed. Yes. And do you know what I see? He asked gently. I see people. Families, shinobi, children, all precious. It's the Hokage's duty to protect them with unwavering resolve. That's the will of fire. Naruko was awed. She nodded slowly. So, do you still want to become Hokage? Yes, she shouted with determination. Kurama grumbled in her mind. He's leading you down a path he wants, and you don't even see it. Later, in her new apartment, she lay in bed, hands behind her head. What did you mean by that? She asked. You never said you wanted to be Hokage. You said you wanted to be strong. Well, the Hokage is the strongest, right? She replied teasingly. Kurama sighed. That's not always true. There are powerful shinobi all over the world, not just in Konoha. I get it, she said calmly. But the first Hokage was supposed to be really strong. You know, the one who tamed a certain legendary fox? Kurama huffed, resisting the urge to complain further. Naruko giggled. Don't worry, partner. I'll get strong enough to match that Madara you're always warning me about. That's my promise. And if I become Hokage along the way, well, I won't complain. TCH, Kurama muttered. But deep down, even the fox spirit knew, she meant it. The fox spirit found herself oddly affected. She hadn't even begun the intricate plan of setting Naruko against Madara, yet the young kunoichi was already promising cooperation. The spirit should have felt purely amused by this turn of events, and she did, but there was a strange flicker of something else lingering in her awareness. Something she couldn't quite define. But really, it didn't matter. Flashback ends. There you are, Naruko-chan. Mizuki appeared slightly out of breath as he finally found the young ninja he was looking for. I know Iruka-sensei may come across as strict sometimes, but please believe me, he truly wants the best for you, Mizuki explained gently, though he noticed Naruko's eyes narrowing with suspicion. He quickly moved on. But I also know how much you want to be a true shinobi. That's why Konoha created a special opportunity, for gifted individuals like you. Mizuki leaned closer, speaking with a false air of sincerity. All you need to do is retrieve the forbidden scroll from the Hokage's office and learn one technique from it. If you do that, I can make sure you're officially promoted. Inside her mind, Kurama's voice thundered with urgency. It's a trap. Naruko winced slightly at the sudden headache. Sheesh, I know. But if there's even a small chance of succeeding, I have to take it. She grinned brightly, pushing the doubts aside. Don't worry, sensei. I've got this. Dash. After preparing at her modest apartment, Naruko changed out of her usual clothes, loose blue pants and a white shirt adorned with the orange spiral her grandfather gave her, and into a sleek, black ninja outfit, albeit one that felt more like a costume than proper gear. This is the most ridiculous plan ever, Kurama groaned. Oh hush, Fluffy. It'll be fun, Naruko replied mentally, her tone light-hearted. Kurama huffed in disbelief. You call this fun? We're attempting something nearly impossible dressed like we're on our way to a costume party. At least I found a use for it. She chirped. Despite Kurama's grumbling, Naruko navigated the village's security with precision, relying on Mizuki's information about the shift changes. She masked her chakra completely, slipping past the elite Onbu guards undetected. Upon arriving at the Hokage's office, she noticed an intricate security web made of chakra strings anchored to a visible seal on the stairs. Thanks to her enhanced sensory skills, she maneuvered through the setup with ease. At the top of the stairs, another obstacle awaited, a chakra recognition seal on the door, linked to the Hokage's unique energy signature. If anyone unrecognized touched the door, it could trigger unknown effects. But Naruko spotted a minute flaw in the seal, a nearly invisible hole at the base of the door. With steady hands and unmatched chakra control, she crafted an ultra-thin string of energy to reach the handle through the opening. Click. The door creaked open. She entered quietly and located the massive scroll inside the office's secure chamber. With a look of satisfaction, she slung it over her shoulder and prepared to exit via the window when Naruko-chan? What are you? Startled, Naruko shouted, Henge Bunshin no Jutsu. In a puff of smoke, multiple illusionary versions of herself surrounded the Hokage. Though they were harmless projections, they served as the perfect distraction. By the time the smoke cleared, Naruko had already made her escape. Hiruzen, surprised but unharmed, could only shake his head. He would need to inform the shinobi forces, but first, he'd reach out to Naruko's teacher. He believed there was more to this than met the eye, and he wanted the girl brought back safely, not harshly. An hour passed. Naruko had arrived at the designated meeting point Mizuki mentioned. In that time, she had successfully learned one of the scroll's techniques. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique. The potential was incredible. She could train multiple skills at once and experiment safely through her clones. Kurama was uncharacteristically quiet, seemingly impressed. She was just turning her attention to another intriguing technique, Bunshin Daibakua, when she was interrupted. Naruko. What are you doing? Iruka-sensei. She beamed, holding up the scroll. I did it. I learned a technique. Look. She eagerly pointed at the entry she had mastered. And I was just about to try this next one. Wanna watch? Iruka started to respond, but the sudden sound of flying metal cut him off. Look out. He leapt in front of her, intercepting the attack meant for his student. Though injured, he managed to shield Naruko successfully. Well, Mizuki said from a nearby tree branch. I didn't expect you to be here, Iruka. But it doesn't matter. Naruko passes. Now, hand over the scroll. Iruka hesitated. A part of him still wanted to believe his colleague wasn't behind this, but the evidence was growing. Kurama wasn't confused at all. Time to show him what we've got. Naruko, playing along, tossed the scroll toward Mizuki. He eagerly caught it, and turned to run. But he never saw the incoming punch. Naruko's well-placed strike sent Mizuki tumbling from the branch, crashing through several others before landing flat on the ground. Startled but furious, Mizuki got back up and launched himself at her, but she had already triggered a genjutsu, a brilliant illusion that made it seem as though she was always just out of reach. While Mizuki chased shadows, Naruko watched calmly. My illusions are top tier, she thought with a grin. Iruka caught up just as Mizuki, caught in an illusion loop, began to wear down. Naruko turned to him, focused. Iruka-sensei, I can keep him trapped. But you have to finish this, just knock him out. Iruka, trusting his student, nodded and gently struck Mizuki's neck, rendering him unconscious. That was. He began. Awesome? Epic? Inspiring? Naruko chimed in. Surprising, Iruka finished with a warm smile. That works too, she replied, laughing gently. Close your eyes, Naruko, Iruka said gently, clearing his throat. His expression held a sense of pride and admiration for his student. Why? Naruko tilted her head, her curious tone slightly breaking the solemn moment. Just do it. Iruka replied, though his voice retained a playful firmness. And no peeking, I'm a ninja, remember? I'll know. With a small pout, Naruko relented, her enhanced senses making it nearly impossible not to feel what was happening around her. She could sense Iruka's careful hands as he untied his own forehead protector and fastened it onto her head. Open your eyes, Naruko Uzumaki, Janan of Konohagakure. Before he could even finish his sentence, Iruka was enveloped in a joyful embrace. After a quick change of clothes at home, Naruko and Iruka made their way to the Hokage's office. There, they reported the recent events, and Naruko sincerely offered an apology for the unexpected turn of her earlier actions. Once the formalities concluded, Naruko finally voiced the question that had been pressing on her heart, one that Kurama, the fox spirit within her, had urged her to ask. Grandpa, why did Mizuki call me a Kyuubi child? She asked innocently, her tone filled with curiosity rather than concern. And so, the Hokage explained. He shared the tale of a mighty creature known as the Nine Tails, a being of such immense power that no ordinary means could stop it. He spoke of the brave and intelligent fourth Hokage, who made the difficult decision to seal the creature within a newborn, not as a punishment, but as a way to protect the village and the child. He explained how that child was meant to be seen as a hero, a symbol of hope and resilience. When the story reached its peak, Naruko asked the question that had truly been lingering in her heart. Why me? Were my parents close to the fourth Hokage? Why did he choose me? The Hokage sighed softly, pausing to consider his words. Come with me, he said gently. He led her to the large window that overlooked the Hidden Leaf village. Look over to the far right. That stone face, yes, that one, is your father. Namikaze Minato, the fourth Hokage. Naruko's bright eyes widened with amazement. That's incredible. He's my father? My hero? That's amazing, she exclaimed, spinning into a cheerful, celebratory dance. But before she got too carried away, the Hokage held up a hand. You must promise not to tell anyone yet. Your father had many rivals, and even though times have changed, it's best to wait until you're strong enough to protect yourself and those around you. Naruko smiled brightly. All right. I won't say a word, not until I'm stronger than you, old man, she teased playfully. The Hokage chuckled and shook his head with exaggerated dismay. What am I going to do with you, Naruko? Then came the question she had been saving for last. And my mom? Sarutobi's eyes softened. Kushina Uzumaki. She was a remarkable kunoichi with vibrant red hair and a powerful spirit. She cared for you deeply, long before you were born. You remind me a lot of her. He walked to his desk and searched through the drawers until he found what he was looking for, a photograph. In it stood Minato and Kushina, the latter looking lovingly down at her rounded belly. As Naruko took the photo into her hands, her eyes shimmered with emotion. She clutched it close, overwhelmed with joy and appreciation. The Hokage's trust in her ability to keep such an important truth safe meant the world to her. Thank you, she whispered, voice soft and sincere. She gave the Hokage a warm hug before running home, her heart light, her thoughts at peace. That night, Naruko fell into the most restful sleep she had known in years, comforted by the love she had always longed for, finally made real. This concludes the first installment of our content series. If you found value in the information presented or were intrigued by the journey thus far, I encourage you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to remain updated on forthcoming releases. Your continued engagement empowers this channel to evolve and deliver increasingly sophisticated and immersive content. Thank you for your time, attention, and support. With appreciation. 6 Path Weeb.